Good afternoon, everyone. This is Councilwoman Jamelle McKenzie, Ward 1 in the city of College Park, and I want to welcome you today to the Social Studies Project. This is a project where we intend to fix the world one issue at a time. And I want to tell you a little bit more about the project, the who, the what, the when, and the how, the why of the Social Studies Project. The Social Studies Project is a documentary series where we take a hard look at society's most damaging problems and find solutions using the process of elimination. Using a list created by resident experts and advisors who are for or against or even in the middle, we will dive into each topic to find a solution to the related problem by the end of the show. For example, depending on the nature of a topic, we'll do a series of tests, discuss in a panel or interview with concerned citizens and resident experts to determine a possible solution for the aforementioned issue. And at the end of each show, we will base the plausibility of each topic on the opinions of our panelists, resident experts, and interviewees. The goal is to have a consensually agreed upon solution by the end of each episode. So basically, we're going to really change the world and fix it one episode at a time. We realize we won't always have an absolute final answer due to the complexity of our topics, but the steps we will take toward finding them will land us closer and make things better for the society and the community that we live in. Okay, so let's tell you a little bit more about what we're doing today. Suicide Prevention Month is this month, the month of September. And it's actually Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And I believe that the responsibility for suicide prevention lies within each of us. We all have a responsibility to take care of our fellow citizens, and in the time where we may need each other the most, we need to be there for one another. Remember, it takes a village. And so today we've gathered a panel of speakers that range from mental health therapists, veterans, concerned citizens, and survivors, and of course, those of you that are here in the audience with us today. Because again, it takes the whole village. I want to kind of go over just a couple of things about what we want to have happen in this program. This program is meant to generate thought and to promote discussion. We recognize that this particular topic of suicide may be difficult to discuss, and it may contain some sensitive material. Some of you may have already had personal experience with suicide, and it may be difficult to participate. And at any time, if you feel like you need to leave the room or you're having difficulty, we can help you connect to someone who can help you as well. Though we want to have open dialogue today, we also want to remain respectful of those who are around us. Since we do not know what experience others in the group have had with suicide, all statements should be respectful of other viewpoints, even if there's disagreement. Now, I just kind of want to go over a little bit of housekeeping for those of us that are present today. In order for everyone that's participating to concentrate fully on the program, we want to let everyone know that the restrooms are located if you go out the doors at the back and you just kind of walk straight and go to your right, you'll see the male and female restroom area. We're asking that you would silence your cell phone. So if you can put them on airplane mode, I'm not asking you to turn them off, but just silence them. Remember also for us on the panel that the goal and those in the audience is to discuss, but not to debate. We want to be respectful of others, and all comments should be directed at the idea being communicated and not the person talking, okay? Do not interrupt. Allow others to finish before you respond. No personal attacks. And if any time a break is needed, please give the facilitator and myself a hand signal or one finger. And you can notify me those of you that are in the group, if you need to leave the group. So with that being said, I want to share a couple of statistics with you about suicide. In Georgia alone, in 2022, there were 1,624 recorded suicides. Those are the ones that made it to be recorded. There may be even more, and that is an alarming number. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the state of Georgia. And it's the second cause of death in the state of Georgia for those who are aged 24 years old. Let me say that again. For 24-year-olds in the state of Georgia, suicide is the second leading cause of death. And that's why we really want to focus on our youth. I wonder if anybody in the audience today knows the suicide and crisis lifeline numbers, what those are. Dr. Moranci? 988, thank you. And that was Dr. Moranci, who is one of our school board members, District 7 for Fulton County Schools, and a leading mental health professional in the state of Georgia. That's right. Dialing 988, that is the number that was launched in July 16th, on July 16th, 2022. Because again, we were seeing that we were having quite a few suicides in the state of Georgia, and something needed to be done about it. And so if you call 988, and I want to say that those of you that are watching via YouTube, College Park Live Station, or any other means that you may be watching, we want you to know that if you are having a crisis, please dial 988. That's going to be the fastest way. What will happen is when you dial, you'll be automatically connected to a trained staff member who will help address immediate needs and connect you to care resources 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And so at this time, I'm going to just share the program outline, and then we're going to have our distinguished guests introduce themselves. On our outline today, we will have a group discussion about sources and distress warning signs. We will also have a group discussion about intervention. Then we'll have a group discussion on time-based prevention, followed by a group discussion about resources and follow-ups. Then we will have a group discussion about being proactive, because that's really going to be the key. I know for myself, as a survivor of I actually survived suicide. And it was, learning the triggers, the things that trigger me so that I don't go back into that dark place. And finally, we will have our conclusion and final thoughts. So at this time, I'm going to turn this into the hands of each of our panelists, who will introduce themselves to you, starting with this gentleman in the blue.
Welcome, everyone. Right. Greetings, everyone, and thank you all for being out. My name is Rasheid Edwards. I go by Coach Edwards. I'm a licensed professional counselor, a hypnotherapist, and a mental health consultant, and I'm glad to be here.
Good afternoon, people. I am Dr. Kawakami, also a licensed hypnotherapist and licensed professional counselor, also known as the Mind Doctor. You may have seen me on a small cable station called Bravo TV, and that is Married to Medicine, or maybe it was on Love and Hip Hop for Couples Retreat. But in all of those, looking to help folks who have mental health challenges, and I'm also happy to be here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shantavia Farmer. I also go by Tavia. That's what the community knows me as. I am a mental health advocate, as well as the founder of the Shantavia Foundation, which is a mental health nonprofit that advocates for mental health and provide resources to African Americans here in the metro area.
All right, we're going to turn it over to Dr. K, who's going to take us into our next phase.
Well, thank you, Councilwoman, Council Lady. Either way, yes. So she shared 1,624 suicides in 2022. That's 1,624 too many in 2022. Imagine the families that are impacted, right? The families, each and every person, the father, the mother, the daughter, the sister, everyone impacted, and who continues to mourn even to this day. That's a lot of folks. And perhaps they were wondering at the time, what could we have done perhaps to have prevented that? Were there signs that we missed? And that surely is a very tough thing to live with as they go forward. And so we want to talk about some of those risk factors. And so we open the panel with the question, what seems to be the major source of stress for people in need of intervention? Right? Panel, what seems to be the major source of distress for people in need of intervention?
So one of the major forms of distress for individuals who may need intervention is the fact that they are experiencing an extreme amount of pain. And typically, when they're in that sense of that extreme pain, they're not being resourceful. They're not able to help themselves, because when you experience emotional overwhelm, part of what happens is it kind of hijacks your brain, the frontal lobe portion, the part that allows you to be able to think clearly and make decisions. And so the pain becomes so overwhelming that they're not able to manage their emotions. They're not able to reach out and figure out what they need to do. So the pain starts to take the wheel, and the pain drives them. So they're not able to make good decisions. Typically, they're going to isolate, which is going to reinforce the issues, and then they're not going to reach out and find help. So that's one of the major things. And when we talk about people who are 24 years of age and that being the number 2 cause, well, consider 24, you haven't really completed the functioning or the growth of your brain yet. And so you're in a space where you're already kind of vulnerable. So these are things we need to think about when we talk about risk factors and things that impact those who are in need of intervention.
So I like, if you could, you talked about the brain being hijacked, right? So this isn't an issue of someone's willpower or someone being weak. Is that correct?
Absolutely not. No, it's not willpower. And typically, the way we've been socialized, we tell people, man up, boss up, or do these different things. But when you're under emotional stress and overwhelm, you're not able to do those things. And so you're absolutely right, Dr. K. It's not an issue of willpower and what someone will or won't do, but it's more so what they can and can't do because of the condition.
Thank you so much, sir. And Tavia?
I think lack of resources, and especially in the African American community. Who do I go to? Who do I talk to? Because I feel like a lot of the times, especially like when we look at the older generation, we're told to pray or go to God instead of reaching out to therapists and stuff like that, and destigmatizing mental health and our resources.
Well, you said a mouthful there for sure. In the community, it is a stigma to talk about mental health, right? And there's a challenge then of being transparent about, I'm struggling with something, right? I'm in pain. And if I could communicate what it was or what it is, I'd be able to share just how much pain I'm in. That would then give you perhaps an opportunity to remedy the pain with something, right? To pull me close and to say it's going to be okay. Yeah, great point. That's for sure. Councilwoman?
Well, again, I definitely believe the stigma is an issue. The concern about what other people are going to say about us, being ostracized and being looked upon as though you're weak. I also believe that denial is another issue that we deal with. We feel the pain, but we don't want to admit even to ourselves that we are in pain. So that's a personal. And then what I put next to denial is condemnation and guilt. It's the self-talk that we say to ourselves. We start asking ourselves, what's wrong with me? Why am I experiencing? Why? And we begin to self-blame ourselves when, that's not the issue. And but if we could be more open and people could be embraced in times with, I think what it is we're just taught you got to be strong. Right. And so when it comes to mental illness, the whole thing is you're weak, you're not strong. And then we start telling ourselves. So I think it's what we tell ourselves as well.
Absolutely. And again, back to what you shared, when we're hurt physically, we go to the hospital. But where do we go when we have mental challenges and we're feeling the pain? Surely not to the church sometimes, because when we do, even the church, as you shared, seems to view it in a certain way. Now, let's just pray about it. And it is true, let's just pray about it. But sometimes, right, it is faith without works is dead. And there is power, right, in the teachings of those who can come and sit down, who had training to deal with mental health things. And so, yeah, I've been in church as well where they've kind of poo-pooed the mental health counselor and the therapist. Let's just pray about it. Well, even the word says some things don't go about, but with prayer and fasting. And so it's more than just what folks say sometimes. And so I'm glad you brought that up. The next question for our panel is, so with those who have committed suicide, right, there are families who are continuously mourning. And again, they may ask the question, did we miss any? What was going on? Was there something that we could have done differently to prevent this? And so the next question for the panel is, how well equipped do you think you are to recognize the sources of distress in your life or in the lives of your loved ones? You want to go first, Tavia?
I feel like, especially after, so I lost my sister to suicide back in 2013. Were there any signs? Not at all. My sister was a cheerleader. She's very active in her high school. But now, after doing the work and, starting a nonprofit and educating myself, I am a little bit more aware of like what resources there are, and who I can refer people to in the time of distress. So.
Thank you so much.
It is very difficult to sometimes recognize when a person is thinking about suiciding. What I'm training myself to do is just to really listen, really, really listen to people when they speak to you, and emphasize with them, because to try to be able to see what's not being said. But it can be a challenge because just as you said, there are you'll never know. A lot of the and I'm fortunate that I have not had very many people close to me suicide or to die by suicide. But I have been, as a chaplain, I was exposed to several suicides and a police chaplain, and dealing with those families and hearing their stories. And so the key for me is listening to people and do not take when they say something for granted. Never brush somebody off and just say, oh, it's okay, girl, you'll get over it. But sometimes it's to hear, to listen, and I know we're going to get into how to address it, but to ask why. So I think that my listening skills are helping me a lot.
So, great point, and great points. Because imagine we ask folks, how are things going? They say fine. Right? Or they express things aren't going very well. And we think, man, you don't have any issues. What are you talking about? Right? We dismiss their concerns because we think, you don't have any issues. I'm looking at your lifestyle. We get excited about what's on the physical, on the outside, but really what's on the inside. And that often is hidden by a facade that people walk around like we got it going on, right? Because of what we perceive as weakness. Or no one's going to care. Who's going to care when I share this stuff, right? And or how are you going to help? You don't have a clue what I'm going through. So there's a lot of things to consider. I have two siblings who both attempted twice. And I look back and say, wow, what was going on? And well, they had a lifestyle and they were doing things, but I didn't think they would ever result in attempting suicide. So did I miss some signs? Absolutely. I truly wasn't plugged in when I was a teenager, but I look back now, those were all signs of help. Struggling with something. I need someone to hear me, not just dismiss what I'm saying. Yeah, I have issues, but I need something more than just like condemnation and shame. So it's important, again, that we pause and just reflect. What are we missing? And when someone comes to us, do we have the time to slow down and say, tell me about it? What's really happening in your life?
I think you made a good point there, Dr. K. And to that point, what are some things that we're missing? One of the more important things we should be doing, if we're not doing, those that we care about, our loved ones and those we're close to, is we need to try to connect and remain connected. Because without being connected, we're out in the world alone. And that's typically how a lot of people who are experiencing extreme emotional distress feel. They feel like you said, nobody really cares. You could walk by someone and ask them how they're doing, and that's just a quick exchange. But no one's really listening to connect to what the person is saying. So when we connect, our instincts kind of come into play. Like we can feel for those who we are connected to. And so that gives us something of a way to make sure that we're not missing some of the warning signs is that we need to make sure that we remain connected. So it's asking how you're doing, but what does that really mean? You know, how you doing? I'm okay. Well, what is okay? Tell me about okay. Or what is fine? You know, dig a little bit deeper than the surface and try to establish that connection, because once you connect, ultimately it's, you know, the person is going to open up. But without connection, without being someone that they feel that they can connect to, that they can be safe around, and that they feel would support them, then they're not going to share.
Great point, sir. So that's a great segue into then, how can we be better equipped? How can we better understand what folks are going through?
I know this is going to sound a bit offhanded, but first we need to understand who and what we are. Because if we don't understand who we are, then we don't understand what we're presenting to people and how we actually resonate and connect with them. And then we become a little more aware of what we're doing, and we understand ourselves, and then we can see things in other people. Because typically, as we're going through life, people are mirroring things to us. If you're really engaged, involved, and connected, you start to see that life becomes a mirror, and you can see things if you really connect.
I was gonna say the same thing. Basically, like just tapping in, you know, knowing yourself and asking the question of how can I support you in this moment. Just being that listening ear may be all that your friend may need or your family member in that safe and be in that safe space, like you said. Yeah, I just say like tap in so that you can know how you feel, and then you can better help somebody else.
Praise God, sister. Yeah. So there's sources of distress, right, Coach Edwards, that can become risk factors for suicide, and some of those might be relationship problems. Right? My, I don't even want to go home. It's tough. Financial situations when it's so overwhelming. I can't see how I'm gonna pay these things, and the phone keeps ringing, and they keep calling, and I can't get a job. Legal problems, even health concerns. Some folks, it's not worth living like this anymore. Right? And we're around, and we want the person to stay alive, but they're saying, I'm not like this. Other things, of course, drugs and alcohol. So there are common risk factors. Right? And for example, relationship problems. We know how those can be overwhelming at times. Loss of a loved one, a lack of social support, as our Coach Edwards shared earlier. Even legal problems can be overwhelming, right? How am I going to get out of this? I do not see a way out. Health concerns, chronic pain. I don't want to keep living like this. Setbacks or failures, feelings of hopelessness, of course, drug and alcohol abuse, but also depression or anxiety. Right? That puts us in a place where, as you said earlier, Coach Edwards, we're able to pass to what's going on. That part of our brain is hijacked and we're stuck. Yeah, we know we should be doing something, but we just seem to be stuck. Coach Edwards.
Yeah, I was thinking when Shantavia made the mention about her sister, I can absolutely relate to that because, you know, by most accounts, when I was in middle, high school, I was an excellent scholar, top of my class. I was an athlete. I had access to girls, if you will. I was kind of popular. Like things looked good for me on the outside. But every day I would go home, black my windows out, lay in my bed and just be depressed and not really understand why. And so, you know, like you were saying, there were no outward signs. Well, I talked to my father recently, and I expressed this to him that I was depressed as a young person. He had no idea. My parents had no idea because they thought everything was good. And again, for me, it was one of those things about not feeling connected. I'm not from here. So when I moved to Atlanta at a young age, I was an outsider from the beginning. And so part of my issues was not feeling connected. And there I was again, you know, not being connected, feeling on the outside, being depressed, not understanding why I'm depressed, what's going on with me. And then, you know, at a certain point, some of that stuff turns into aggression. And so here I am, smart kid, got everything going on for me. But every time you look around, I'm in a fight. I'm trying to hurt somebody. But really, that's the inner pain of not being connected and me wanting to express that outwardly in a very unresourceful way.
And I would just add to that, just, learning how depression looks for you. And that goes into the whole tap in thing. Learning what you like, what makes you happy, what makes you sad. Learning yourself, because if you can say even for me, like this year, I kind of took a sabbatical from the foundation because I'm like, how can I sit here and promote mental health and I'm not feeling myself? You know what I'm saying? So getting back to me, doing things that make me happy, doing things to pull myself back to the Shantavia that I know, right? So learning the signs of depression, learning what makes you happy and what not. And I had to actually just educate one of my friends because she was just like, I feel like I'm healed. This, that, and the third. I'm not laying in the bed. I'm not sad. But I had to educate her and let her know, like, depression might not be that for you. Everybody turns to something else or different coping mechanisms such as, alcohol, shopping, different things like that, because you're trying to figure out what's the problem. And if you don't know, then you have to figure it out. And that just goes into the self-work.
I like that. And even, folks are sometimes confused when we say depression. We're not in the corner curled up, right? In such a way, folks say he has an issue, that's a red flag. But there's something called persistent depressive disorder. That's a low-lying depression that some might say he's flaky, go out, he's moody at times. You're in position in a way that is not so bad that you're crying all the time, at least not outwardly, but perhaps on the inside. And I'll be transparent for y'all. And when I met Coach Edwards here, we talked about some things. And just as he described a minute ago, those were things that I struggled with. And we're like, man, you know what? We two angry black men. We got some stuff going on. But we connected in a way because of that transparency and that vulnerability. And so it may not look depression, but even low depression, right? Mood changes. Should give rise to some concern. When you're dressed up looking like that brother, suited and booted, you think, he ain't got no issues. But yet, he still did. When I'm doing some shows, and they think he ain't got no issues. But I did. And who's asking? Digging a little deeper, ask those questions. And so we know some of the risk factors, and then we also look at some of the warning signs, right? Significant mood changes, right, that happens at times. Again, those who are actually expressing themselves of hopelessness. I don't know, I'm gonna make it. My. It's just, it seems like I can't do nothing right. Right. Those are real cues for us to pause at times and say, well, tell me a little more about that. We can't be so rushed without that connection because we do not know who is the next person who realize, I don't want to be here anymore. Right. So it's important to look at some of the risk factors, some of the warning signs of change. What about someone acting recklessly or impulsively? Might that give us some concern? That's not like her. I don't like him. She get all these speeding tickets and spend all this money. All right, we're thinking, oh, that might be immaturity or they're just doing something, but it may be a cry for help. Again, gives us cause to pause and ask some deeper questions. Again, alcoholism. I used to drink once a week. Now I'm drinking 3 times a day. Right. And it might even be situational, but still, those situations, we have to realize our situations aren't our destinations, right? And that comes from family to remind us, listen, I may not know exactly what you're going through, but I'm here for you. I don't know exactly, but I'm here as an ear, just to be with you, to be present during a time of challenge. As we go on, so here's a reminder. So sources of distress can become risk factors, right, for suicide. Some risk factors may be reduced by interventions, while others can be difficult to change or manage. Back over to the Councilwoman.
All righty. We're going to move into segment 2, which is intervention. I'm going to read a little bit of information for you. Key information here is the Ask, Care, and Escort, or it's called the ACE model, the ACE model, is a framework to encourage someone in a supportive manner, particularly if that person is having difficulty. So this is something that can be used. It's called the Ask, Care, and Escort model. This model may be used at any time, non-emergency and emergency, across multiple situations and settings. Now, these are the three components of ACE or ACE. The first, again, is ask. Asking direct questions helps you find out what is going on. When beginning a conversation, take your time and do not rush the conversation unless the situation is an emergency. Rushing through conversations can cause individuals to shut down. Anybody ever been shut down because somebody's rushing you? All right. To get started, it may be helpful to discuss the changes you have seen. For instance, hey, John, I realized that, it seems like you're drinking. You used to drink once a week, and now you're drinking 3 times a day. Is it something that let's talk, Make sure to ask directly about thoughts of even suicide in your conversation. A lot of times we try to beat around the bush. You're feeling that person is feeling that way, but you don't necessarily want to use the suicide word. But some things just need to be called out sometime. Take all reports of suicidal thoughts very seriously. And again, I've been there. I dealt with suicidal ideation, and never ignore remarks about suicide and never promise secrecy. Even as a police chaplain, we keep everything. We couldn't tell anybody, you can't tell any of your officers' business, but if they start talking about taking their lives, we've got to do something about that. So there's no secrets when it comes to somebody killing themselves. The second component is care. Calmly express concern and listen carefully to what you are being told. Make sure you understand the full picture of what's going on by summarizing what you have heard, and then ask for clarification. Don't be judgmental, and again, do not promise secrecy. Use the information that you've gathered to determine the appropriate resources to help this person. And the third component is to escort the person to the right resource. Don't leave them there. Don't leave them hanging. Don't expect them to do it themselves. While many people simply need help solving with the problem solving, some may need immediate intervention, and they should not be left alone for any reason. Always ensure the person in distress gets connected to the appropriate helping resource. In the case of those expressing suicidal thoughts, this must occur immediately. Services may include a chaplain, a mental health provider, or a local emergency room.
So it is ACE. Ask, care, escort. All right, ask, care, escort. And you mentioned something I thought was very interesting. As a young clinician, I was afraid to ask the question about suicide. Like, I don't want to put it in their mind if they're not thinking about it. It's my. Now I'm to blame, but I realize asking opens up a door. The question is, what do I say next? All right, I just want to ask, is there a method? All right, how long have you been considered? Is there access to whatever the method might be? It's going to be pills, it's going to be this or that. So it's important to ask the question. You'd be surprised because you surely aren't planting a seed, because many may already be considering it and are just waiting for someone to ask the question to say, man, I'm so glad you asked. It's a relief I can talk about this now. So it's important. Our next segment is talking about time-based prevention. So the question is, Tavia, you'll be the first. How might time-based prevention strategies be helpful for the person in need?
I feel like you have to about the situation, figuring out, okay, is this person in distress? Like right now, do I need to get you immediate help? Are you suicidal? Because if not, then I don't want to leave you, and we're going to get you to the right resources. As far as other resources, such as, let me refer you to a therapist. Let you talk to somebody. There's even been times where I've had to call my aid myself just for work and to figure out like what to do next in certain situations. So definitely analyzing and getting a triage where to send that person.
Awesome. Coach Edwards, your thoughts?
So, with regard to time-based interventions or prevention mechanisms, we, as therapists, we're taught to contract for safety, and we ask them what type of resources they have available, and then we ask them what types of weapons and things that, may not work well for them. So we ask these things to find out what is possible. If someone is feeling a particular way and they've articulated to you that if they were to commit suicide, they would do it like this, then the next logical question is going to be, okay, do you have the means to do so? Okay, who can we contact when you're in distress? What can we do to help mitigate some of those issues, help bring that intensity down so that we can get you where you need to be? And like you mentioned, when we find someone who's in intense distress, no, we don't want to leave them alone. Because chances are, now that they're talking about it, if you just leave that bag open, then now they have something to work from. So we want to make sure that we get them help when we open that Pandora's box. And like you said, staying right there. You can call 988. Like, everyone has a cell phone. If you come across or you're working with or interfacing with a friend or loved one and they tell you that they're having suicidal thoughts and that they may or may not do something, there's nothing wrong with talking with them and at the same time pulling out your cell phone, calling 988. Because first off, one of the things I tell my people who I work with in therapy is that we got to give some grace to our loved ones because they're not counselors. They're not therapists.
Come on.
So they're not appropriately equipped to be able to help you with everything. And they're not supposed to. But there are those of us who are appropriately equipped, who've been trained, who have the credentials, and who can help. And so calling 988, if you don't know what to do, is an excellent next move. There's nothing wrong with that. We all have a cell phone and we can do that.
No?
I got mine. I'm on.
Thank you, sir.
I got mine already. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I guess I can piggyback off of that then. As far as like being an educator.
Can we start again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to piggyback off of what he said. Especially like being an educator in the school system, it's kind of tough because especially for me, I try to create that safe space for my students to come and, express how they feel, what they're going through. And sometimes, as mandated reporters, we have to report certain situations. So, it's having to sit in that seat of, okay, well, I have to tell somebody about this situation and I have to explain to the student, like, listen, I have to tell somebody because it's my job, but this is to help you. And I know that you're going to catch the backlash from your mama and everybody else because we're going to bring all these people in here. But at the end of the day, let's do the work so that we can get you to a place where, you're able to thrive in a more mental state.
Super. So the decision to act on a suicidal thought can be impulsive, right? While others may harbor those thoughts over and over, other times they can be impulsive, as you shared, Coach Edwards. When we open up a memory, start talking to someone about some stuff, it revivifies an experience that we can't just walk away from and say, okay, I'm going to hear about it. It needs to be resolved in a way, right? It needs to be assured either it's going to be okay or we have help on the way, or perhaps we don't leave their side, right? Come with me. Come on now, we need to go ahead and walk and talk. We need to go somewhere, which could be even right to the hospital, right? For a level of expertise and training that's best suited for that moment, right? So it's not about it's almost like picking a scab and then walking away. It's going to bleed, right? And so we need to do more than just open up that memory and talk to them about it. But if we don't have that skill set, no problem, we still need to get them some help, right? So some of the key information here again, the decision to act on a suicidal thought can be impulsive. Most people who do not have an immediate access to their preferred means of a suicide will not try another method. So if I'm already considering this method and I don't have access to that, right, my thought's not going to be, well, let me try something else, right? Praise God for that. Delaying a person's ability to attempt suicide by even 5 minutes can save their life, right? We're interrupting their flow, saying there's help on the way. There's something more to think about than just not being here. And it matters. Yeah, say it again there, sir.
You matter. I mean,
Yeah.
oftentimes you don't hear that on the radio. Sometimes we need to hear that we matter, or we
So I have lethal means inside the home. The acronym is SLOW, right? You want to go slow. So if you have a safe, right, it needs to be locked up. Locks, of course, you may have a lockbox, but also keeping things outside of the home, right? Why even have them inside the home if it presents an opportunity for the individual? It could be the pills. You say, you know what? Granny and them have a whole bunch of pills on the shelf. Last thing I need to do is have them present and have this individual then think, if I just take all of them, I'll be okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get them locked on up, out of the reach, and to minimize the access for that which we don't want them to do.
I would say, if like family members that may have suicidal ideations and they have weapons, take them. Don't be scared to take them, because at the end of the day, you might be saving their life, and they don't have access to it, and don't give it back. They might beg, like, "Oh, I'm gonna be okay, I'm fine," but if you can't sense that, and I feel like everybody's big on energy, so if you know that, like deep down inside, okay, this person is not right now, don't give it back.
I think that's a good point you made, because I think sometimes with family members, we don't want to hurt their feelings and get them. They're gonna be mad if they know I took their gun and put it somewhere and hid it. But at the end of the day, like you said, it is when they're still around next year and they've come to their a different mindset. It's worth it. So we can't worry about hurting somebody's feelings or making someone uncomfortable. Not when it comes to caring about somebody. I don't think you can love a person too much. So it's just, if we're doing it out of tough love and love, take it away.
Absolutely. And take a look there, Councilwoman, to make sure we're on the right track here. If we're going right into resources and follow-up. So knowing what helping agencies and resources are available allows you and family members to get help, as we shared at the beginning and throughout. 988. If you dial 911, better, but it's something, right? You can't remember 988. But the truth is, they're not trained as the folks on 988, right, are. Again, resources are important to know. All right, so it's easy access. Last thing you want is, who do I need to call? But asking more questions and having things posted surely help us be prepared for a time of emergency. So as we prepare to land the plane, Tavia, what other resources can you suggest to a person contemplating suicide?
My resource is to follow the Shantavia Farmer Foundation. We host different events. We host in the den, which is a conversation basically for men only, for them to have a safe space and talk about things, and it's also led by a male therapist. I'm there, but I'm not there. But I feel like it's been a space for them, and it's growing constantly. We also do journalism part of the journal and write down how they feel about different topics and situations. So that would be my resource.
I love it.
Connect people to different therapists. We do have a network of therapists that we refer people to in the need of crisis.
In my travels as a clinician, there were times when individuals said, I don't want to be a part of a group. I don't want to tell my story. And I said, well, just go one time. And they would go and say, wow, they get me. She gets me. There's something about them that helped me understand more about myself, or just a belonging, right? Even if the story was a little different, they understood more than my neighbors, more than my family sometimes. So joining the groups that you're talking about is important, whether it's all male or as a veteran as I am. PTSD groups are super important to get connected, to then experience, wow, I'm not the only one. I'm not alone. right? There's other folks around. And sometimes when we hear other folks' stories, we realize I'm not that bad after all, right? Folks have been through much more. So we can be encouraged. I thought I was doing bad until I heard your stuff, sir, right? I thought I was doing bad until I heard her stuff. So it's important, but not just as a frame of reference, but in terms of solidarity and connection and, Coach Edwards, as you said, community, right? A belonging that I'm important, not just one individual, but I'm a part of a community that loves me.
I can't emphasize enough the importance of getting involved in groups. As Dr. Edwards has already, Coach Edwards has already said, isolation is one of the things that really get us. And something about hearing somebody else's story sometimes makes you realize that yours wasn't as bad as you thought it was. Again, from my own experience, I know the times when I was dealing with suicidal ideation, I felt I was the only person in the world that was going through what I was going through, and that nobody could understand me. And of course, now as I've become a counselor myself and I hear the stories of other people, and I say, wow, what I was dealing with really wasn't what I thought it was. So I think that we really want to make use of it. Sometimes it's really uncomfortable because you want to stay in that box, but really getting involved in a group, a support group, and just being able to tell your story. You got to get it out. The battle to me, was an internal battle. It was the thoughts that I thought. And as long as I kept them to myself, they were all mine. I had to own them. But as soon as I was able to share it with other people, then I was able to release it. And then again, it's just like, you keep your hand closed. A closed hand you can't get anything out of it. But when you open your hand, you leave yourself open to the possibilities, endless possibilities.
Well, I love that. You think about whether we are a believer, right, or those who say I'm a spirit operating in a human body or a human with a spirit body, it's not a war against flesh, is it? No. And for many, it's a spiritual battle. And that's why really going to the church can be extremely helpful, especially if those in the church are trained and understand that, the concepts of mental health and the things that can be helped. But surely it is more of a spiritual battle. Isolation will have you struggling. Secrets will keep you sick. If folks know that saying, right? Secrets will keep you sick. And sometimes folks are holding secrets that are so hurtful. Right? I can't even talk to anyone about that. So again, we want to recognize some of the signs. If the council would be so kind to read some crisis hotlines.
Yeah. So these are some crisis hotlines that you can reach out to or you can share with a loved one. One is the Georgia Crisis and Access Line, and their number is 1-800-715-4225. That's 1-800-715-4225. We also have in Georgia the Georgia Peer-to-Peer Warm Line. And that's another one. You can dial 888-945-1414. 888-945-1414. And we also have the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And that number is 1-800-273-8255. 1-800-273-8255. 8255. And last, there is also, this is new for us, the crisis text line. Okay, when I was in graduate school, we only had telephone numbers, but now we have text. You can text to someone, and that you will text the word START, 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 to 741-741. And you can text about any crisis 24/7. That's the crisis text line. Following up regularly with a distressed family member until the problem is adequately resolved is critical. It supports the individual and helps resolve any additional problems or complications that may occur. When you deal with a family member who's going through this type of situation, just don't let them go. Continue to stay connected. That's it.
Well, we thank each of you for coming today.
It's been an honor for us to sit down as council to share. Be proactive. The rewards of this new react. I'm saying something, I let them react. So hey, let me come back to the defensive trial. You want to do something prior to it actually happening. So being proactive. So one of the questions that we ask ourselves is, how can we be more proactive, help strengthen pro-sexual practice? How can you be proactive, help strengthen pro-sexual
Make sure I understand that question. So how could we be proactive? Well, I think this august body of people here today is a representation of proactivity. When we recognize a need, that's when we get active. That's when we get the, get the tires moving, get the vehicles out, right? But just recognizing who and what we are. And something I wanted to kind of underscore, when we think about who and what we are, right? We experience in this environment, our mental health or who and what we are an environment all unto ourselves as well as outside of ourselves. But our inner environment, our mental environment, as the councilwoman said, we have all of our thoughts to ourselves. Unbeknownst to a lot of us, we're not even aware. We have a tape rolling in our heads at all times. We refer to it as self-talk. Sometimes we call it, sometimes I refer to it as my motion picture soundtrack. I had all this stuff going in the back of my mind, but a lot of that stuff can be unhealthy. And so if you're not monitoring what's going on in your inner environment, it eventually comes out. And so we have to make sure that we're creating activities of safety for our inner environment. So being proactive is doing things like exercising, making sure we get out in the sun, grounding ourselves, connecting with loved ones, telling people you love them, and allowing yourself to be loved in return. Sometimes we don't even allow ourselves to be loved because we got so much to unpack. But there are a lot of things we could do to be proactive, but it starts with you. And I'm so grateful to see so many people in this audience who are concerned with this topic because, again, the age of 24 being the number 2 factor of death for young people, that's heavy. So there are a lot of things that we could do, but I think you all should give yourselves a round of applause and pop your collars because you're actually doing the proactive piece right now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And you again touched on connectedness and sense of purpose. All right. Connectedness and sense of purpose are the 2 main protective factors.
Just really like taking a walk outside, meditating, getting, just like I said, tapping into yourself and just being okay with just being, sitting in silence. I think I'm a big one for that. And my friends right now, like, do not contact me after or before a certain time. Setting boundaries, that's major. I think all of these things and practices will, help, prevent those things from happening.
And again, Coach Edwards, you mentioned just being mindful of what we're taking in. Social media, while it has many advantages, surely it has some disadvantages because they often say that we're watching someone else's highlight reel, right? The best of them. And we know all those filters can make things look immaculate, amazing, yet that's really not how it is. And so there's some young ladies, for example, in terms of eating and health, they think, wow, I can never look like that, but I should look like that because that's what we're always seeing. I treat a lot of young ladies who say, man, I want to look like that. Well, why do you want to look like that? Because that's what's being projected all the time, but that's also what their parents perhaps are allowing them to take in. So to be mindful of what we're taking in. Optimism about the tomorrow. Again, they often say your current situation is not your final destination. It's just temporary. We're transitioning. strong social support from family, friends, and coworkers, talking about the problems. Again, what's in the dark will surely keep you there. But what happens, Coach Edwards, when the truth comes out? We're set free, right? So it's important to bring out the truth and also then partner with effective coping and problem-solving skills. And then also what we're doing here now is creating a culture that encourages seeking help early on. Again, proactive, not reactive.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out. We are going to take time to take questions as well, but we're going to close this part of the presentation out in the next couple of minutes. I do want to acknowledge the ladies from the Queenables being here with us, and we're going to hear more from them. And again, Dr. Moranci and all those that are in the health profession or in the profession of help professions. So we have health professions and we have help professions. These are professions that I say do the heart work, not the hard work, but the heart work. So in conclusion, I want us to remember that one person, one conversation, one text message can help a person in need, and it might even save a life. Taking the time to notice what's going on in your family member's life and interviewing early when something is not right can make all the difference. Together, we can keep our community healthy, ready, and alive. And thank you so much.